Afternoon, everyone. I'm Councillor Kimberly Barrett. I'm the Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Green in the City, and we're here for our decision meeting today. Before we start, a little bit of housekeeping and safety information for the vast amounts of people who are here today. So if the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and the public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts, and please assemble by the statue of Queen Victoria. To comply with the Guildhall Trust fire marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. May I draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting will be webcast to allow the public to attend remotely if they wish to do so. Please be advised that the public seating area is not in view of the camera used to webcast this meeting. Everyone who speaks will be on camera. Even though they're not here, members of the press and public are permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please, can everyone use the microphones? Remember to switch them off when they've finished. And can I now go around the room and do introductions, starting with Rich?
Good afternoon, Richard Lee, Assistant Director of Culture, Leisure and Regulatory Services.
Jane Didino, Local Democracy Officer.
Councillor Charlotte Gerada for Central Southsea.
Councillor Russ Simpson for Hillsey Ward.
Perfect, thank you everyone. Jane, any apologies for absence today?
Just Councillor Hannah Brent.
Perfect, thank you. And members, any declarations or interest to declare? No, perfect. I believe there are no deputations today. No, so if that's the case, I will move straight on very efficiently to Rich for the summary of the 2024 Annual Status Report for Air Quality. So over to you, Rich.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon once again. I hope everybody is well on this rather chilly day, but it's rather warm in here. As you know, I'm the Assistant Director of Culture, Leisure and Regulatory Services, but I'm more commonly known as the Regulatory Services Manager, and I'm the officer responsible for reviewing and assessing air quality within the boundary of Portsmouth. Are we good? I thought I'd explain what the review and assessment role is and provide an explanation of such. Effectively, what I need to do is to manage and maintain a robust network of monitoring devices and report on air quality levels annually to the government via an annual status report. What that does is not only enable the government to monitor and assess our performance in terms of compliance with the national air quality objectives, but it also informs local agencies and our partners within Portsmouth City Council to make decisions around local air quality. I reiterate, this is a report that focuses on compliance. It provides data in relation to 2023. That sounds like a long time ago, but it's the 2023 data set that I'll be talking about this afternoon, which has been published within the 2024 Annual Status Report. That report has been sent to government and they have accepted that report. I also think it's sensible to explain what the report does not cover in relation to air quality. It does not seek to explain or discuss measures proposed or required to tackle or reduce air pollution. And it does not comment in detail in terms of public health initiatives and concerns in respect to protecting human health. The ASR itself was delivered to government last year. It contains 350 pages of detailed analysis in terms of all our monitoring locations across the city. And what I've attempted to do in this information paper is to summarise that rather comprehensive document into 6 pages. The report in front of you this afternoon concentrates on nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter data set for 2023 and provides a narrative that demonstrates trends of pollution, its compliance with the national air quality objectives over a 5-year period. It's worth noting, of course, we're in 2025 and it feels perhaps a long time ago, but COVID was with us in 2021. So when looking at a 5-year data set, those trends would have been impacted by COVID over 2021 and perhaps a little bit into 2022. I think it's worth also just mentioning the network of monitoring devices that we have. We monitor via two means. One is rather low-tech, but it is an approved system by the government, and that is nitrogen dioxide diffusion tubes. We have 234 diffusion tube locations around the city, and we complement that by more sophisticated devices called continuous air quality monitoring stations, of which Portsmouth City Council maintains 5, and DEFRA has a single station in Anglesey Road, but they maintain that station, and it's discrete from the 5 stations that we have in operation for Portsmouth City Council. It's also worth noting that we have tubes, the diffusion tubes, attached to those continuous monitoring stations, mainly for validation purposes, which I can explain as necessary. And therefore, the total is, if my math serves me correctly, 246 monitoring locations around the city. It's also worth saying that in several locations we deploy triplicate tubes, so 3 tubes in a single location, to enable us to have more accurate data so we can average the levels from 3 tubes. And we deploy roughly 450 tubes per month around the city. What I'm suggesting to you, Chair, is that we have a very robust monitoring network and a very robust data set as a result. So let me move on to the results of the data assessment for 2023. And first of all, I'd like to take you through the report in terms of nitrogen dioxide levels. And first of all, I'll concentrate on the results of the diffusion tubes. So remembering the number of diffusion tubes we have in the city, and that the air quality objective to protect human health is 40 micrograms per metre cube for the annual average. You will see in in section 2.1.1 that there were 3 locations where the 40 compliance standard was exceeded. 2 of these locations are in Alfred Road and 1 is within Hope Street. And I'm sure members here this afternoon and the public more generally are aware that those stretches of the road are relatively short and that there are no sensitive receptors bordering those roads. And by sensitive receptors, I'm talking about homes, schools and hospitals. If we look at the levels along those roads where there was an exceedance, remembering the 40 standard, in Hope Street the level was 42.51, in Alfred Road 42.79 and 43.73. It's probably worth also saying that in Alfred Road the 2 locations are on opposite sides of the road, so we're trying to obtain levels from incoming and outgoing traffic and seeing whether there's a difference between those 2 traffic movements. Hope Street is a one-way street effectively, so we've only deployed the 1 tube in that location. It's also worth noting that whilst those diffusion tube results are in non-compliance with the National Air Quality Objectives, one of our continuous air quality monitoring stations is located also in Alfred Road. And the results, which are in the report, and I'll come on to those, but the results for the annual average, remembering the 40 standard, was 37.3. So the more sophisticated monitoring device, the more accurate monitoring device, is indicating that we are in compliance in Alfred Road for 2023. Always remember that we're referring back to 2023. In terms of the continuous monitoring stations, I've detailed the results of all of them, all 6 of them, within section 2.4. Remembering that standard, it's the same standard for continuous monitoring or diffusion tubes of 40 micrograms per metre cube. And just for some clarity, you will see that there's 3 columns of narrative, and I think it's worth providing a little bit of an explanation as what they are. The first column relates to the difference between the 2022 data and the 2023 data. And what I've done is tried to keep it simple as to whether there was an increase or decrease in pollution over that period of effectively 2 years, but it's reported in 2023. The second column is the 5-year trend, which is very important. And of course, the third column is whether there are any exceedances. I've written down within the report, in brackets alongside each location, the actual level of pollution monitored for the annual average. And as you can see, and as I've already confirmed, they are all below, including Alfred Road, all below the objective standard. The point that I want to make here, you will see that I've underlined a couple which were adverse, but this means that there was an increase between 2022 and 2023. So any upward trend for that limited time has been reported there. But you can see, I'll point out one, the Arran site, which is the background site effectively. It's located in the playing field of Gatcombe Park. That monitors nitrogen dioxide. This is the level for nitrogen dioxide on the annual average, and you can see it's 15.01. So although there was an adverse result, the level between 2022 and 2023 has gone up, but the overall level remains very low indeed when you relate it back to the compliance standard of 40. So all the continuous monitoring stations are recording compliance in terms of nitrogen dioxide. I have mentioned there are other objectives in terms of annual means. That's noted in table in section 2.5. But again, I can confirm that we're not in exceedance of our annual mean targets in terms of compliance. So what I'll do is move on to section 2.7. And the similar table that was presented in terms of nitrogen dioxide. Table 2.7 is in respect to particulate matter of 10 microns, and the annual average is the same as the objective standard for nitrogen dioxide of 40. So just looking at the results, again, they're in brackets alongside each of the monitoring stations. If you relate those results to the objective standard of 40, you can see that we are doing well in terms of compliance. Again, the three columns of narrative, just a reminder, the first one is reference to 22 to 23, the second is the 5-year trend, and the third is in relation to compliance. Obviously, we are in compliance, those levels are well below the objective standard set to protect human health. So in terms of particulate matter, PM10, we are doing well in terms of compliance. It's worth stating that only our continuous monitoring stations monitor particulate matters. There is no kind of low-tech device that I can deploy as I can for nitrogen dioxide. But 6 air quality monitoring stations within Portsmouth, and any of you that know these roads, you will see that they are in the most heavily trafficked roads in Portsmouth, London Road, Burfield Road, and that's on the junction of Burfield Road and Copner Road, Marlin Road, of course, at the end of the motorway, Anglesey Road, which was adopted by DEFRA as one of the most heavily trafficked roads in the city, and of course Alfred Road, which we've already touched upon. So let's move on to the final area that I wish to run through in terms of compliance, and that is section 2.10. Exactly the same 3 columns, and 2.10 relates to particulate matter of 2.5 microns. And it's worth saying that the objective standard for this, there isn't an absolute standard, it's more of a guideline, but that guideline is 25 micrograms per metre cubed on an annual average. So 25, that's the figure you need to remember. Again, if we look at the numbers, which are in brackets alongside each monitoring station, you can see, once again, we are in compliance with all those locations in terms of the 2.5 objective standard. So in summary, when I look at all the results from all our stations and all the manner in which we monitor pollution, we are doing well in terms of compliance, and we do have good knowledge of where we may be near compliance or not complying, as previously mentioned. Moving on to section 3, I've tried to summarise the huge amounts of work that Portsmouth City Council is doing in terms of reviewing and assessing the future of monitoring. And of course, we're all aware, excuse me, we're all aware that we have a clean air zone within Portsmouth and the geographical location of such. And because Alfred Road and Hope Street are within that area, it's very sensible to continue to focus not only on those two hotspot areas, those 2 areas of non-compliance, or those 3 locations, those 2 areas of non-compliance. We'll continue to do that. We'll continue to look at the wider geographical location of the CAS. And it's also worth saying that we do have 5 air quality management areas in the city. Section 3.3 provides a narrative in terms of how they're performing in terms of compliance. They've been performing very well for a number of years, well beyond the 5 years trend that we look at. And there is a narrative as to say whether we need to continue monitoring pollution in those areas in terms of the current objective standards. As we know, there is a 5-year trend which demonstrates compliance, and therefore there could well be a conversation to be had in the future as to whether we should revoke those air quality management areas. So in summary, 3 locations, 2 areas of non-compliance from diffusion tubes. All of the monitoring from our continuous stations suggests that we are in compliance in terms of nitrogen dioxide, PM10 and PM2.5. Very happy to take any questions.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Rich. One thing I will ask, I know what the answer is, but it's probably what we all will get asked, or we get asked already, in regards to the clean air zone. I get a lot of people asking, when will this go? Will the government revoke it at some point? Would you be able to advise what the answer is on that?
It is an interesting question. Obviously, we're trying to predict what the future might be, and that's quite difficult. What I can try and do is try and predict what the recent past might be. We're at the end of 2024, so unfortunately, the data, particularly regarding the diffusion tubes, takes some time to get back from the labs, etc. So we're still missing December, but we do have 11 months of data. I mentioned a validation process. So what we do is deploy diffusion tubes alongside the continuous monitoring stations, and that enables us to determine how well the diffusion tube, low-tech, is performing against the high-tech continuous monitoring station. And every year, as set out within the ASR in its bulk of that report, there is a calculation that we need to deploy to bring the diffusion tube in line with the continuous monitoring station. So there is an unknown there because we don't have a full set of data for 2024, so we don't know what that correction factor will be to bring the tubes in line with the stations. But doing some analysis, and I've got to put lots of caveats around, I haven't crunched the data, remembering of course that the government gave me 6 months to crunch the data, and we're now in day 24 of that period. But looking at what we've got, I would suggest that we are looking towards a further improvement of air quality, generally across the board, and particularly concentrating on Hope Street and Alfred Road. There is a suggestion that there is a level of improvement there as well. I do caveat that for the record, but that seems to be occurring. If I look back, there has been improvement in Alfred Road if we look back a couple of years. I think previously, the previous year was around 46, this year it's around 43. If that improvement continues, which it may do, then we might be on the cusp of compliance even with regards to the diffusion tubes. So if that continues, there may be a conversation around the CAS and how well it's performing, and there may be a narrative to be had with the government around demonstrating that there is compliance. What I would say is it's more than likely, and this isn't, as I tried to set out at the beginning, it's not the focus of the report trying to predict the future, because other brighter, more knowledgeable people are trying to do that rather than myself. But I would suggest, in the same way that we have looked at our air quality management areas and looked at them over a long period of time, because what we don't want to do with any zone of any type is to revoke it without a significant base of knowledge behind us to demonstrate that that zone has worked and has resolved the problem in terms of compliance. So I would suspect that When we publish the report for 2025, which looks at the 2024 data, we'll be close to compliance, if not at compliance, but I also suspect that there will be a period to demonstrate that that is static and there's no fluctuation around compliance. That would be my best guess.
Perfect, thank you. Colleagues, any questions? Charlotte?
Thanks, Chair. You did steal one of my questions, but I'll forgive you. I had a couple of other questions. Thank you, Rich, for that report. It's really, really well outlined and clear to understand. And obviously, yes, moving in the right direction, which is really good. Just a couple of things. The new air quality strategy that's being worked on, I just wondered when that was going to be ready. I don't know exactly when that's going to be completed. It'd be good to find out more about that. And also this is just anecdotal, so it might not tally up to actual data and evidence, but when I do rarely use my car and go out of the city on like a weekend, the traffic in the areas obviously described in this report that have still got issues are just completely chock-a-block. And this traffic is really, really slow moving, and it's just terrible. It's really, really bad, and it feels like it's got worse actually, like in recent years. Especially if Portsmouth is playing at home. Yeah, thank you, exactly. And then obviously with events going on in Gunwharf and things like that. So I just wondered, I mean, this is, the $1 million question, but if there's anything more that can be done from a sort of traffic control and management perspective. I know we are super, super limited because we're an island city and we essentially have 3 roads going in, 3 roads going out, and that's it. But it just feels like that's a real sort of crunch point in terms of traffic. Thank you.
Again, with reference to what my area of expertise is, which is review and assessment of air quality and not trying to design solutions to such, or indeed to comment upon the sort of public health initiatives. The strategy that you mentioned is being managed by a public health expert, looking at all of the data. The data informs those conversations. It would be wrong of me to predict when that will be published, but I can say I'm heavily involved with it in terms of the data set and what that is meaning. And we last had a conversation regarding the strategy only yesterday. So I can say it's progressing, but it'd be wrong for me as I'm not the officer responsible to say when it will be published. In terms of the $1 million question, and your narrative around congestion and it being fairly chock-a-block on those busy days, what I would say to you is that isn't a new scenario. And the officers responsible for traffic movement, etc., in our transport team have been looking over a long period of time around particularly lanes, so widths of lanes, the control of movement of traffic, so green light times and that sort of thing. Because the idea is that you ensure that those most congested roads flow well, and that you have your wait times are managed effectively on the other roads which join those roads. So there's less congestion in those roads, or stop-start movements, and the main throughput of the traffic can flow through the roads, for example, Alfred Road, Hope Street, going out of the city. And I'm not here to predict the reasons why there's been an improvement in air quality. It could be around the traffic makeup, so the composition of the traffic, the number of vehicles, those vehicles not travelling in because of the clean air zone. But there is likely to be a contributing factor in terms of the abatement technology within the vehicles, the design of the vehicles, hybrid vehicles. Obviously, there's a move towards more vehicles being electric. And when you're removing some of the combustion engines, then clearly that might have an impact upon nitrogen dioxide. Conversely, if you introduce battery-operated vehicles, they're slightly heavier, and therefore particulate matter, whilst it's not coming out of the exhaust, may be there from tyre wear or brake wear and those sorts of things which generate particulates. You're absolutely right, and I'll hang on to your own narrative, Councillor. It is the $1 million question. What does the local authority need to do to improve the situation? I am part of those conversations, but as I say, they are being managed, the strategy is being managed effectively by public health, and the transport team are managing the sort of further assessment, targeted feasibility assessments in terms of what else can be done to deliver an improvement. And remember the narrative, and it is mentioned within the report, is that there's use of data, obviously, and data is very valuable. There's use of models to try and predict the future as a result of data. And, of course, the narrative is always in the shortest possible time frame. So what more can we do? Lots of discussions, and I'm speaking for transport here, and I shouldn't be, but there's lots of discussions, for example, around the benefit of electric buses, etc., and so on. But if I go back to Alfred Road and Hope Street, where we have exceedances in terms of diffusion tube levels, there are no buses using Hope Street or Alfred Road. So any improvement they deliver more widely is not going to be beneficial to those roads where there are no buses using them. It's not really an answer to your question, but I hope that might be useful.
I think just to back what Rich said, when I got back yesterday, I did have a conversation with someone from the transport team, because what they are looking at doing, whatever they can do to any, what it's like, even a small change can make a difference. So there have been a number of the team looking into the, as Rich said, traffic light system, to see whether even by changing it by a few seconds, that can make a difference for getting traffic moving and gone. Of course, will have many benefits for people as well. So that's one of the things, that we are looking into at the moment, and we do make changes all the time in that regard as well. Obviously, there are other factors. It's something that Councillor Simpson was speaking at our briefing as well that I think have helped. Changes in people's behaviours as well. Obviously, with the 20% uptake in the bus service over the last year, I think that's helped in some areas. I know it's not everyone's favourite topic of conversation, but with the different modes of transport, like the voice scooters as well, offering a different type of way to get somewhere, that's obviously helped, and the uptake on that has gone up as well, which has reduced the amount of car journeys. And we know that a lot of people, from the evidence and surveys and talking to people, that it's short journeys across the city that cause problems, and that most people do. So it's trying to change that behaviour and that thought to see how we can make it easier, I think, to get people out of their vehicles and get where they need to go. Obviously, buses would be great, and we have seen an improvement there because of investment in that service as well. So I think it's a difficult thing, isn't it? 'Cause as you said, it's really limited to what we can do, but we want to push forward with it. But it's also trying to find what we can do with the money that we've got as well. So it's very difficult, but we'll definitely carry on looking and keeping you updated with what we can and can't do. And any suggestions, always appreciated. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, just to add to the end of that, I mean, it would help actually if buses and trains were cheaper. I mean, if you think about Portsmouth, we only really have 4 train stations, 5 train stations. 4 on the island, but we include Cosham as well. But it's so expensive, even just going from like Cosham to Portsmouth Harbour, or even Hillsey to Fratton. It's like, £3 or £4. It's just way too much money for something that's meant to be more energy efficient, and that doesn't help. It would definitely make someone take their car over something that's more energy efficient, or even walk. But I wanted to also thank Richard for the report, and I want to actually have more of a statement, because I'm not sure about both of you. We get quite a lot of letters, and over the last year and a half, I had one letter that had a Greta Thunberg book and a David Attenborough one, which was annotated, lovely. Makes my life a bit easier when reading through it, especially highlighting certain points. And then I had a recent letter saying, what are you going to do about it? And I kind of feel that kind of sentence thrown at me is very similar to what are you going to do about parking. But the thing is, it's a group effort. I mean, what do I individually do? Well, I've got solar panels, I've got a greenhouse, I've planted trees, I try and walk and not take my car. It's what we can do as a community, as residents, I think needs to be more emphasised on, not just all the burden on us individual councillors. But I'm confident, and I'm hoping the residents and the lovely gentleman keeps sending me these letters and books that listens. We are listening. We are trying our best. We are asking those difficult questions. Recently talking about vents sucking in like bad air through filters. We are looking at new ways, but there's 2 things that's going against us. It's time and it's money. So just put it out there, just in case we do receive the letters. We don't just throw it in the bin. You know, I'm not saying that we always do that, but that's the assumption, isn't it? That we just get letters, we throw in the bin. We do read them. We do take it in. We do try our best. And trying, I think, is the most important thing.
I absolutely agree with you, and I'm very lucky in the opposition that I have, that we are all fully on board and working together as best as possible with this. I get the same letters as you do and the same contacts, and I probably get shouted at a little bit more than you, because I get told off all the time that it's absolutely my fault, climate change. But equally, the fact that people are so passionate about this subject, it does give me hope. So I'm quite happy to take the anger, because at least people care about their communities, their environments, and they want us to move forward. So I understand them getting frustrated, but there's so many things that hoops we have to jump through, lack of money, lack of time sometimes, and priorities as well, you know. So we will always do whatever we can do. I am always more than happy to work with anybody and everybody. This just cuts across everything. We all work together on this, and we have to, because it's the health of our residents, the health of our planet and our city as well. You know, it might not affect me so much, but I worry about my kids and grandkids, how this all is going to, well, maybe grandkids, that's a bit of pressure on my children, but but you know, it's not going to affect us probably sitting in this room, but it will affect the future generations. So by starting all those conversations at work now, we will always do whatever we can. But we are, as you said, quite limited to what we can do. We can do things as individuals. We can try and do things together as a council as well. And then you've got the whole other side, which government, get them to try and do things, put things in as well. But it's all about working together and pushing forward. So anyone who's listening, we do listen, we do hear you, we understand the frustration, we will carry on working. If anyone ever has any suggestions, we're always open to listening to them, as long as it's in a calm, polite, respectful way. That's all I will say. So I completely agree with you, Russell. And I understand the frustration as well, because I get it all the time. Perhaps you're not doing anything. I can promise you, in the background we have amazing officers who know their stuff, working really hard, pushing forward. We're very lucky as a council that we've got some amazing officers who do amazing bid writing as well to get external funding, because we wouldn't have been able to do even a quarter of the stuff that we're doing now without that. So especially in my portfolio as well, we pull in a significant amount of funding to be able to do what we do, and we're incredibly lucky. When I talk to my counterparts across various councils across the country, they're not quite in the same position as us, and they're feeling it, they're feeling the pressure, and they're worried about what steps forward they can take next. So in a way, we are incredibly lucky, and we are moving forward as quickly as probably we can do. There's always something we could do. I'd be worried if I just sat down here and went, done, let's walk away, we're absolutely finished, we've done everything we can. There's always something more we can do. So but it's also, that's why I make a point of talking to my counterparts from whatever party across the country, because we have to work together on this. It's something that we've all got the same aim, or I would hope so anyway, but the ones I talk to, we all have the same aim, we all have the same problems, we all have the same worries. So being able to work together to try and figure it out, share data, which I know, Rich, I know you talk to other people as well across the country, sharing what's worked for us as a council as well, and what's not worked for us will help other councils. So if we could stop a council from making the same mistake that we might have made, or if something didn't quite work very well, then that's all great. So I've gone on a bit there, but just to agree with you, Councillor Simpson, absolutely correct. Short version, yeah. Any other questions at all, Colin? One thing I will say, I know that there's been a lot of press recently, because there's a report that's come out from the Southampton sort of area in regards to air quality in Portsmouth, which I know has caused a bit of stress with people and a bit of concern. Looking at this report, I would say this contradicts some of the statements that have been made in that report, which I am quite pleased about. The fact, we don't want any, anything exceeding, but the fact that we've gone down to just 3 across 2 areas makes me start to feel a bit better that we're heading in the right direction. But I just didn't know if there was anything you could say in regards to that report to hopefully make people feel a little bit better about the situation we're in.
That's quite a big question. what I would say in terms of current compliance, the data which is robust and has been validated and accepted by the government, I think is very positive in terms of where we are now as a city and where we were when we had 13 air quality management areas a decade or so ago. So I think there has been a significant improvement in the level of air quality, and I think that's could be applauded by some of the work we've done, some of the work the government have done and the industries have done to improve abatement technology within vehicles, etc. So I would certainly agree that hopefully this paints a picture of where we are in Portsmouth, and of course the 350-page more complicated and complex, but hopefully fairly clear analysis of our data demonstrates that we are in a positive position. But I always go back in terms of compliance. If I had my public health colleagues alongside, of course they would say, and many would agree, that there is no safe level of compliance or no safe level of pollution that in terms of public health. So there's a narrative there. And I know, for example, organisations across the world, WHO, etc., the World Health Organization, they are looking perhaps to reduce that standard in terms of compliance. So whilst we're doing well, and whilst I think if we're looking at the CAS and the ministerial direction and compliance with regards to what the previous government required us to do, I can say yes, we are heading certainly in the right direction. But I suspect those if you like, those goalposts will change. And at some point in time, there will be new compliance standards. So we always need to work towards doing better. So to reassure you, Chair, that I don't think that at any point you will be able to set back and say it's done, because those standards will get tougher. And, you know, there's a narrative to say, rightly so, in terms of public health.
Perfect, thank you. Colleagues, any more questions or any comments at all at the moment? No, well, I think we are done, everyone. So thank you very much, and we will see you soon.